Welcome back to the channel, y'all. This video is going to be opening up the rear differential, which is where I think I got some problems. I was out on the maze, and I was trying to go up a bonus line that I've done before, and maybe I'll insert a bad clip right here of when I did it before, and then the rear end, I heard a big old clunk. The rear end dropped back down, and then was making a clicking sound like a locker that wasn't quite engaging if you were using an auto lock. So I'm not sure if I broke teeth or if I broke something in the locker, but it wasn't working. So I had to dig out on the maze, and I drove home yesterday because I'm about 4 hours from Sand Hollow. So today is the next morning, and I'm going to go ahead and crack it open and let's see if we see anything destructive in there. I don't think it's the transfer case because I still drove out in 4 just fine, right? I thought it was going to be like I broke some teeth on the gears and stuff like that, but I still climbed out and drove fine with the rear locker off, and it wasn't making any noises. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything because there's still potentially some gear. But it was trying to grab. It was like so. Let's see what it was. Well, I'm pulling out the shafts now, finally getting around to it. And I pulled the passenger side out. Nothing wrong with the shaft itself. Plenty of fluid leaking. So I wonder if I have an axle seal or if it's kind of normal for the 14 bolt. So far so good. Had to pull that out because I'm pulling the carrier. Time to move on to the driver's side, and let's get it. Get some of this gray off of the outside to help us out. And then there's 2 pins that key into this hub to help take some of the pressure off the bolts that are on there. So when you're driving this out, these 2 pins that are right here that stick into it, yeah, that's going to be what you're fighting, and the RTV that you're throwing down in there. There we go. Start pouring out for us. See, there's your pins. There's 2 of those, and this one I've already taken off, so this one was easier than doing the driver's side one. And then this shaft will be a little bit shorter too, so while I'm here I can go ahead and measure them. Now Fusion 4x4 already has the length of mine, but sometimes it's nice to know if I just have to order something separate. And these are the 40 splines, and I have to pull these for the carrier, but it also gives me a chance to inspect and make sure that I didn't break one of these, which it wasn't that loud. It was like clicking, click, 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 like a gear skipping. So I would assume that's this. Nope. Nose twist, no nothing, 40 spline, heavy beef. Time to go ahead and break this thing down. I've never worked with an ARB or 14 bolt personally, so this is an airline. I'm not sure how it goes through and what into there, so I gotta detach this and work on that. And then I'm gonna go ahead, and this side's already marked with an upside A, which is here, a sideways A, which is here, to make sure these collars go, and then the rounded angles are out. So it's on the upper side, so it matches up. But I undo these, pull this out, which stops this from spinning. This sets your backlash. So I'll mark these and roll them backwards to loosen it up by a couple. So let's go ahead and undo the airline here first and get going. Having never done this before, other than hooking up the lines, I unscrewed that, and it looks like there's 2, let's see if I can get in here. Ugh, not really. There's 2 nuts. So the top one, which probably seats on the copper line on the inside, and the second one. So I'm gonna put that line back on and brush off this sand here, and then let's get in there and get those unscrewed. Okay, so this is the part that was facing up that just came out. And it looks like they did put some like white tape in there to go ahead and make it as airtight as possible. So that's the end where the hose comes in from the outside, This flat end's the one that's down in there. And this was a 12 milli is what this ended up being. So obviously it looked like they abused it a little bit getting it in, but I'll probably abuse it worse. So let's go ahead and get the other one off and see if that's what's holding this line in here. Okay, so I'm taking a closer look, and in there, it looks like some more white tape in that. And then looking down in the hole, there appears to be a cross input. So it looks like that might be something that you screw in separate from this. So this thing is a 14 milli, but I think this screws into the housing separate from that crosshatch that's down in there. Got my little head up in there, and I could see there's that cross hatching in there, and you can see the copper tube in there. So I'm going to give that a twist with like a short-handed flat blade and see if that's what's up. It's unscrewed, or maybe I need to Google a little bit more how to get that out of there, but I just want to make sure I don't mess it up. All right, so here's the top of, I think they call it a bulkhead fitting. So that was what was screwed in there. I left the main part in there, that was the 14 milli in there, and then you just unscrew this. And then let's see if I can get, the back side of there is your rubber gasket. And when you get these, there's two of those, and then there's a metal like spacer / washer. So I got the hose off and pulled it out. The tip of it wasn't long enough, so usually you'll shove it out, slide on one rubber washer, the spacer, the other rubber washer, hold it out here while you screw this baby in, and then as it tightens down, it'll tighten this O-ring around your copper line. All right, I got these undone, and then the camera isn't showing it, but like I marked them pretty much on. This one's a little bit lower than that, but I'll be spinning it to that line. These are all pretty much in line. And then I can measure the backlash, but it's just enough to wiggle it. That's pretty tight. It's probably like 8 thousandths in there. I'm not sure how heavy this is going to be. They're usually not very light, but that's where we're at. That was a lot easier. Ooh. Sort of ready to come out. Here's the bearing race. One side. Dude, what are these bearings sliding in and out like that for? That's not normal, right? Y'all think this is supposed to be a press fit? I've never been able to do that with a bro. And that's the problem. See that craziness? I'll have to contact them about that. Yeah, this is pressed on, dude. That's not supposed to happen. I'm supposed to need a clamshell puller. Share some stuff with y'all. Something I'm not liking is you would think that maybe that was like a gear, but it's actually somebody's cutting wheel nicking the inside of the housing when they're sanding this stuff down. Like, to me, that's That's no good. The teeth, though, on the pinion actually look just fine. That was one thing I was worried about. But my pinion teeth are good. Yeah, we're good. This bearing doesn't look overheated or anything like that. There's no purpling or bluing, and all this looks normal. Okay, let's get an update. I sent an email to ARB last night and then one to Fusion today, trying to go ahead and get the warranty information. I read on ARB the locker's 5 years, and then yesterday I posted on Instagram, and Ian from Big Tire Garage commented that he's seen 5 other differentials with this bearing spun on the carrier, and they are all of them an ARB 14 bolt 40 spline carrier. So they're not making these, ARB's not making these very tight fitting here. And so I guess the normal person who builds the axles for Fusion is East Coast Gear Supply. And I must have gotten one before they built this or made the change early in the game, because normally they'll TIG weld, I guess, cross on this to hold them on here. And it sounds like it's just this one side that does this. So I'm going to try to go ahead and get them to replace this. But right now, I'm going to tear into it, figure out if the clutch plate teeth that engages messed up or whatever because of my locker wasn't going. And then this is tight enough that I technically could TIG this in. I have a TIG welder. I've done no practice on it, so I'd practice before I weld this up. But I could if I had to. But they should be replacing this, because that doesn't make sense why that's spinning. I'm not worried about marking or scoring up that end right there. That don't hurt my feelings none. There we go. I've never taken one of these apart. Just cooting tight. Let's go ahead and... Okay, see if I can help you see it a little bit better. So get around down in there. Okay, maybe I need to use a little bit more leverage to turn this thing. Oh, come on. There we go. And then supposedly these come out and there's like a little pin. And so I think this is what locks in like your spider gears and what have you. Okay, yeah, so there's the guide pin that goes into these. All right, looks like all 3 of these pins are the exact same size, so it doesn't matter where they go. So let's flip this over. I can feel some spring loading here. Okay. Ooh, there it is. There's what broke. See that, guys? That's the bonded piston. She gone, Gina. That is really good to see. Okay. So here's the spring plate. Instead of, like on some of these other ones, they'll have like a bunch of springs around it, 12 springs or whatever. This is like a compression plate. It looks a lot like what I'd see in a transmission on here. So I'm going to set this down just like it goes instead of rotating it. Okay. Let's pull this. So here's the through pins that can now move because we took those guide pins out here. These 3 holes on the top, those are where the pins came through. The one that had one has a straight through, but let's take a look. Yeah, these teeth look freaking magnificent. Barely run these gears. So what broke y'all, is right there. You see that crack? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that gear in there in these ones. So what I'll do, now that I've verified that, is we'll go ahead and slide this baby back in here. I'm gonna go ahead and blow this out of here. There's like chunks of metal in there. And make sure, yeah, it looks like I blew teeth off. So if you look at the bonded piston, see how that one's got a huge chunk missing right there, that big gap. And then over here, there's not much. This one's perfect. I blew some serious teeth over here where I broke that. Let's see if we blow it up. Come on, baby. Here we go. Okay. Here we go, ladies and gents. There's our backside piece right here, and that usually sits in there, but there's the broken piece with all the teeth that broke off in this thing. She gone, y'all. Look at that. Look at the broken teeth that happened. Trying to get slammed into the other one, and it couldn't hold, so it kept, that's what the old clickety click was. She gone. The worst case scenario for me, guys, is if I was to open this up and I couldn't see something Captain Obvious. This, Captain Obvious, so I'm stoked to see that. All right, I'm back. I got messages back from ARB now, and I sent them pictures of all the damage and stuff like that. And luckily, they're saying that because they're like, oh, normally we wouldn't, but they're going to basically warranty the entire locker because of the damage that's also where the bonded piston was. They did say some things that I don't personally like that they said because it's very presumptive. They're talking about like, well, I forget what they call it, like slamming or something like that. Basically alluding to the fact that the locker's been abused. Like I'm gassing it hard and then I lock it and it just snaps. And it's like, bro, first of all, if I did that, it would be on the engaging side, not on the disengaging side, right? It would be on the side that does the engagement. So that doesn't make sense. Two, I don't do that. I turn my lockers on before I engage in an obstacle. The only one that I turn on and off most of the time is going to be the front. But that's, again, once it's free of the object. I'm not doing it at speed. I'm typically not even doing it while I'm rolling my tires. So, didn't love that comment, but they're sending me a label. I'm going to box this heavy pig up and send it into them. And they'll be sending back a new one. So the next update that you'll get from me after I show you the damage that I'm talking about is when I get a new locker in. So as much as I don't like the comment that was made by them because it's inaccurate, but I've worked for customer service, so I know like positioning and stuff like that, right? But I'm very grateful that they're going to go ahead and right the wrong on this one. So that's great. This is the damage that I'm talking about. You see how it's like cut in on the backside in here? On just a few of them. So if you go to the far side, there's really not a whole lot of that going on. It's really deep here in these spots, and that's right where that broke. That's exactly where that thing broke. So that's what I'm talking about. So I sent them pictures of this and said, I think the carrier itself needs to get replaced, potentially. But if they weren't going to warranty it, say for example, this was like 8 years out and it was all on me, I'd run it. I would, just because that's just who I am. And there was a little bit of chipping on these teeth, not bad, but that's where it engages. So that's where I'd expect, if I was slamming it in, I would expect the damage to be on these and on this. So if it was all like this, they would say I was slamming it. This stuff back here There's no way that's from slamming it. That's from this grabbing onto this still and being pushed really hard and then it just giving up the ghost, right? That's what's happening there. Getting a quick video of the part number for myself for this. This is the bearing that goes on the end. Looks like we're in a Timken. I think that's a 387 AS. And then just the extra number codes right there. All right, y'all, I got lucky. And I think the metal has a lot to do with it. Because those tacks went a lot better. I put a little bit heavier of a tack on here than I did like right here. And I have one here, here, and on the opposite side there. I press this on. The thing is okay, so my bearing's spinning free, but this doesn't move. And this is gonna rotate and this can't spin with it. So I think I'm missing something here. Like my brain's not quite focusing. I got the ring gear cleaned out. I used brake clean and acetone and scrubber and cleaned out the holes. Blew them out. They aren't drilled all the way through because obviously this is a ring gear. So when I red Loctite these for the diff, I'm going to put the red Loctite in the hole because the pressure of screwing it in should push it up the threads. I'll put a little bit on the ends too. But yeah, everything's cleaned out. Cleaned the bolts as well. Got everything pressed on. We're good to go. All right, I couldn't quite get it torqued in time. I used the impact on it as hard as I could. So I'm gonna call it good. I marked them. I am under no illusions that that's going to hold the mark with the oil and stuff going around, but I gotta try. The reason why I couldn't is I have to now, this is in, put the saddles on, and then I'd have to put the shafts in there to stop this from spinning and the tires to sit down so it wouldn't spin freely because it's in the air, and then I could torque it, and by then the potential of the red setting up, it wouldn't be worth it to crack the red. It's better off to let that try to hold it, in my opinion personally. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep working. I thought I messed up because this air part right here, like it spins with the carrier right now. And I think a lot of that has to deal with the fact that it's really tight when you push the bearing on. But there's this post here that comes with your setup that goes on the saddle that sticks in there and holds it. We'll see how that goes. I will be able to torque these bolts. I believe what I found online was 135. Whether that's accurate or not is what it is. I match these lines up, so once I get the saddles torqued down and right, I'll check the backlash. It's a different carrier. Even though they should all be made to the same spec, there's no guarantees. So I'll make sure that backlash and the pattern and everything looks like it's fine. All right, I messed with this a few times. Finally got it set up so that I can read off of a tooth that shouldn't be moving. So I'm getting about 7,000. I tried backing it off, one rotation. So taking this one counterclockwise and this one clockwise and moving it over. One of these teeth moving, so it's center gapped where the line was. Moving it one, it took me to about 9. So it was a 3,000th change. So now I'll go ahead and put some paint on it and double check it. It's back to where it originally was, so I'm not trying to redo a different shape in here. Just wanted to double check. Everything's everything. So I'm back in line with that blue, with the yellow over here. I don't think you can see it because it's so dang bright. But there's the yellow mark. Check my backlash, we're good. I'll put a paint mark on it. And then once we get that, then I'll go ahead and run the airline and stuff and get that all set up. But looks good to me. All right, here's the real raw situation. So I have it exactly back where it was. My backlash settings are right. I haven't changed the pinion depth. Now I didn't put a lot of resistance on it to kind of get a fully like hardened out pattern. But you can see that hardened line in the bottom. It's not very smooth. And then if you look up in here, let's see. You can see when I pulled the carrier, there's this line right here, which is what's been happening to the teeth. Now, so that tells me this is the exact same pattern that it was. Now, I don't want to change it and try to wear something else different. This is not what I would have set this up as. To me, don't love it. And the reason why is look at the backside. It's barely getting in on that. I believe this would be the coast side, and this side's the drive side, if I have that right. It's barely there, and you see the difference? Like that one's closer towards the inside of the tooth, and this one's a little bit more centered. What I would guess is I would have been trying to put the pinion just a little bit deeper in here, getting this further off the inner edge to more towards the middle, tightening up the backlash so hopefully those kind of caught up to each other and more centered. But that's the pattern that it was. I'm confident that's the same pattern. Because you can see a little bit of the shine on those, on the inner edge closer to that where it's been hitting the whole time. And you see where it's more gray towards the outer edge of that ring. That's where it's been riding the whole time. You'll see it right here where it's shinier. And this is more untouched. So you can tell that this is the pattern that came. To me, that's not right. It's a little sloppy. It works, but that wouldn't be the route that I would go. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to go ahead and stick with what it was. It was good to see where the pattern's at, but just for a note for my overview of these axles, that's going to be part of the conversation. I couldn't get the extra stuff out of the manifold hole, so I took a little bit of the extra tubing from the new seal to go ahead and push it out, but this is what I ended up with in mine. And so I don't know if you'll be able to see, I probably have to get a better shot, but the two rings here is an older one and they're coned. So let's see, I don't know, one side of it's coned and the other side's flat. That's there. And so I only could find this and that when I pushed it out. The other one was hiding in the back side of this, which is also coned. So the cone side went into that flat, and then it appears that the cone side went down into the bulkhead, and the two flat sides of these rubber pieces went onto this. And so when you tighten it down, that's what have you. The new ones they don't have this cone thing. They're just like rubber O-rings, and I'm not sure if this is flat or cone still, or how they do that, or what it is. But I'm gonna go ahead and go back with this. These look like they're in good shape, hasn't been leaking. So I'll go back in and tighten her down, but I'm gonna go ahead and press the hose line up and through, and then I'll go ahead and put the three pieces, which I think I might have just dropped one. Anyways, the rubber, the brass, the rubber, and then I can throw this on and start screwing it in, and that'll go ahead and get it set, and it puts pressure on these. So that way the actual copper tubing doesn't go ahead and slide in and out and keeps pressure. We got the airline all hooked up, and I have it pressurized, so I have my air lockers on front and rear because I can't remember which is which. And I listen. I'm not hearing any hissing. Nothing over here. In here. So I think we're sealed up, and the air compressor isn't kicking back on. So now I feel good enough about throwing the shafts in and sealing them up, because the end of the shafts, you put a little bit of like ultra gray gasket maker on there. So I'll put them in, and once they're in, I'll go ahead and let them seat and seal. I'll rotate it to make sure that under load it doesn't leak. Now, obviously, a little bit of oil getting in here will help with the seal. So if it's like a baby amount, it makes sense. But just kind of like a compression leak down test. If you squirt a little bit of oil in there, their compression goes up. That's because your rings are a little bit worn. So obviously they're rubber seals, so they need some extra level of lubrication to go ahead and keep themselves from getting damaged. But let's go ahead and get those shafts in, and then I'll go ahead and measure put this in there and figure out where I'm going to put the drain plug. All right, I'm measuring the, what is this going to be? This is going to be the passenger side shaft because the 14 bolt is not centered. As far as shaft length goes, obviously when you have a 14 bolt, your pinion's offset a little bit more passenger anyway, so that might be centered a little bit off. But anyways, the passenger side right here on this 40 spline comes out to about 42 1/4. When I'm looking with my naked eye, it's just a hair past that, but nothing really worthwhile. And then the thread engagement goes to, it looks like about 40 5/8 is where we're at, is where this stops at, right about there. Maybe a 1/16 shy, so maybe 11/16, something along those lines. But if we call it 5/8, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's going to be 1.5 inches of engagement. A little bit more than that. It's going to be 1 5/8 engagement, or 1 9/16 if we're shorter. So a good amount of engagement in here that you can see on that. So now that I have that measurement, I'll keep that for myself in case I ever have to order a rear shaft, especially if these things get broken off. I'll know right off, and that's just to the pressed in against the flange right there. That'll be our length. We're all cleaned out. I used some brake clean on this. I used some brake clean on this surface. I might hit this with a little bit more brake clean, just to make sure there's nothing left. So a little rag and some brake clean. And then it's time to go ahead and put some of this ultra gray, it's the lighter gray stuff, on here. I'll set it in there, make sure that the 2 pins align. And then while that's kind of setting up a little bit before I tighten it all the way down, then I'll go ahead and clean all the red that's off of these and get these bolts ready to go in. Red Loctite them in and we'll be off to the races. I got to figure out what the torque spec is though, but that's where we're at, y'all. All right, we got those tapped in. Got the ultra gray in here. I just got it in, had to tap it through because obviously those 2 pins a little bit. Rotate the pinion just a scotch. Not the pinion, but the carrier a little bit, the locker, to get it to tap in. And so now it's time to go ahead and let that set up for a few minutes and clean up these bolts. We are all torqued down. I found something online that said these go to 115, so that's what I did. They didn't snap, so I'll probably stick with that. You can see the RTV. It's still super goopy. It's not super warm out right now. It's probably like 50, 55. So I'll let this cure up for a day or two. Do the other side. This little guy's my answer for not wanting to pull out the air hose, but cleaning out the threads. Pretty ghetto, but it works. All right, the driver's side shaft measures in at 35 1/8, and it goes into about 33 7/8. Sorry, where's that at? 33 7/8. So we're at 1 1/4 inches of engagement right there, just about. So just for my notes, and again, you guys, this is for a 72-inch wide axle from Fusion or East Coast Gear Supply, 40 spline, 14 bolt. So that's 35 1/8 right there, and then all the splines go all the way down to 30 3/4. So there's my measurement on this. We are on the driver's side now, and I found when I was cleaning up one of these bolts that the threads had gotten buggered up some. I don't know if you can make it out. You can see that kind of cut in right there. So I went and got a tap and a die. I had a tap. I needed the die. So I just cleaned up the threads with a tap. I know it loosens them a little bit. And then I cleaned this one up because I did find some of these, which are a 7/16 by 14 by 1.5 inch length of thread. But I couldn't find the 12 point. And so I found a flange bolt, which obviously is going to be too big and stick out. It'll work at a pinch, right? Like, I'll keep them for my go bag, put them on there, you grind them smooth, whatever, right? Like, but I'm trying to find some of these online, and they're looking kind of expensive. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse this one. I'm going to go ahead and mark which one that one goes into, so when I want to go ahead and just replace one, this will be it. Okay, well, I got this cover off and I'm fixing everything. I decided to add this drain plug here. All my hits are generally right here and then right along this edge. So I plan on putting some weld right here just to kind of build that back up a little bit, because it's not going to interfere where it meets right here. And then I took one of these. I ordered this out. This is actually a ballistic when they were going out of business before they got rebought out. I got these off of like their sale. And so it was a 1-inch hole saw 1 inch on there. And then I beveled it to go around the weld. And so I was not expecting, like, that's pretty thick. I was not expecting how thick this lid is on here. Like, it is incredibly thick. So I have this set up so it'll fit perfectly. And shoot, with the bevel there. And then on the inside of it, it's pretty much exactly the height of it. So I'll go ahead and weld in here. It's got a little bit of a bevel that I put in there because I was using one of those step bits. Harbor Freight one worked great. So it gives a little bit more bevel for me to get some weld in there. I'll probably run it like a 1/8 weld and weld this up in here and get that all done up on the inside and outside. And then tomorrow I have an inspection plug that's got like a screw-on plug that I'm going to put on here, which is going to be the passenger side of the lid. One of these two spots. All right, we got that welded in. Next time I got to use some anti-spatter because I left this out. I'll probably pull it out in a second too because it's got a rubber O-ring on it. But I wanted to make sure it fit. Here's the inside. I just kind of wax it towards it, and the plug doesn't actually go all the way to the base of that, so it's good. So it's barely like 1/16 to 1/8 taller, and I can sand that down more if I need to. And then I threw a little bit of extra bead right here, which obviously makes your, hope I didn't warp it in heating that line up. But I mean, that's so thick that hopefully if I did warp it, that my gasket, whatever you call that dang thing, lube locker, will still span it and we'll be good. But we'll see how that works. But that's flat enough that if it hits, and I can tighten that up even more, you know, it might scrape some, but we'll see. All right, I decided to give it the old sand down. I didn't make it totally flat to leave a little bit of extra bulk for potential strength, but there we go. If I need to get it all the way flat, I can, but I doubt that's going to interfere at all because now we're pretty much there. All right, here's the start to going ahead and getting this one in. So we're going to go ahead and weld this in. Instead of doing it on like the fill line where it's at, I think it's about 2 quarts. I'm just going to put it here where it's easy to access the copper line if I need to go ahead and swap any of the seals at any point, and then also easier to just pour diff fluid in and just pour it down in here. All right, I finally got that drilled out, sanded out, grinded out. I finally ordered a carbide bit for my grinder, the die grinder, and that worked really, really well. It kicked all kinds of little shards out, which is why I hate using it. But ultimately, we're in a good spot. I'm gonna go ahead and do it so that way, just like this little lip right here is flat with the inside. And that should give me enough room to weld to this and to this. And that's what we're gonna go ahead and do. It's already been cleaned up. It's obviously already been scuffed up and acetone. So I'm gonna go ahead and preheat this because the weather behind me has been raining. So let's go ahead and get the water out of this and get it welded in, and we should be good to go. All right, we got it welded in. So there you go. Not bad, not the best, not bad. And then obviously I'm not the best, but then we got it welded all the way in around on the inside. So that's not going anywhere. So there's complete. So now all I got to do is do some painting. All right, I'm dumping a quart in this thing. I had to put a new lube locker because I put the other one on there. Tested it with a little bit of fluid and it had some slow seepage. So I did a little sanding on the lower half, just because the scraping had folded over some metal, and I was not careful enough. There was a little bit of wrinkling I caused, but it seems like the lube locker's filling it. I thought I might have to switch to RTV, but I cannot tell you how much at the end of this I appreciate being able to just stick a bottle in here in that hole without having to have one of these little things on here and just go for it and fill her up. That is so much nicer than the alternative that it was before. So I'm going to check I can't remember what the fill amount is. I think the front's around like 2 quarts and the rear, my 14 bolt. I'm reading online it's something like 3.6 quarts or 3 quarts or something like that. So I'll go ahead and let this one fully go ahead and drain in. Double check and make sure that that fits, and then I'll cut off that excess if it's not leaking, and then we're off to the races. All right, we're dumping our second quart in. Just took a razor knife to the back side of it and a couple folded over, and off she pops. There's the bottom of that lube blocker. All right, let's go ahead and conclude this video up for y'all. So we are full, and as far as the amount of fluid that this thing took, so 3 full, and then this one wasn't full. This one was sitting at this line right here. It went down to this. So that's a little less than half as far as that goes. So just under 3.5 quarts. Now, when I emptied this, I wanted to figure out how much is left in there. I figured it out. Anyways, so from this line, you can see how full these are. This one was a little bit higher from the factory. Very nice. But anyways, this much was how much was still in there. Or if you're looking at the side of a bottle, the difference between these two lines is what was left in that diff after I drained it out of that hole. Because obviously it's not all the way down in the crack, because I need it to not get hit, if at all possible, and to make sure it cleared teeth and all that stuff. So it takes about 3.5 quarts. I love it. I really love the fill port. If that doesn't work out, I don't care. But this has been a gigantic work and took a lot of time just because I was slow on it. But locker seems good. We're ready to go ahead and get back to wheeling. Easter Jeep Safari's about here. It happens in about a week and a half. I'll go ahead and post this video up, guys. I may or may not be making it to EJS, so maybe I'll see some of you guys there. I'm trying to see about making a quick trip with some buddies down to Sand Hollow a couple days before, and then move on over to Moab to do a couple days of EJS. But thanks for following along, guys. If you have this problem, it's not too tough to go ahead and resolve as far as that broken piece. And the upgrades to the diff is a pain, but definitely I think that thing's worth it. I'll probably go ahead and put that on my other Jeep too.